we're about a week past the 2025 NFL draft, and over the next few days, I'll release like division by division grade videos. But since I'm a Bears fan, the loyalty's a little different, gets a little more attention. Are you ready? You know you want to talk about some Bears football! And by God, that's what I'm here to do. So let's take a look back at the Bears and how I feel they did in this 2025 draft. And I know you're going to have those that are going to say, well, you can't really grade a draft. You got to wait 2 or 3 years. And yeah, maybe on the surface that's true. However, you can grade based off of what the board was at the time, the team strategy, their approach, how they executed within the draft, movement up and down, acquiring draft pick capital, giving up draft pick capital. You can evaluate all those things. You really can. And, as much as we can say, well, what do people know sometimes? Generally speaking, I bet you the hit-miss rate on draft grades leans a little more on the hit side traditionally. It's just my thought here. But let's talk about the Bears anyways. One thing they certainly were in this draft is they were maneuverable, right? They made deals several times during this draft, picked up additional draft pick capital. And it was really interesting to me, first and foremost, to see this team invest its first 3 picks on the offensive side of the ball, which is appropriate. Caleb Williams is your guy. You've got to build around him. You just hired Ben Johnson. You don't go do that, spend the number 1 pick on a quarterback, then the next year hire an offensive-minded guru, allegedly, in Ben Johnson. And I don't mean allegedly negative, so put your panties out of your cracks. But you don't sit there and do all that and then invest most of your premium picks on the defensive side of the ball. Like, that's really, really stupid. That's poor roster build strategy. The Bears and general manager Ryan Poles did not do that here. There are other things maybe to question about the strategy here, but going offense the first 3 picks, like, they had the flexibility to do that because of what they did in free agency and trades by trading for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, signing Drew Dahlman. They fixed the interior of the offensive line, right? You know what I mean? Like, they invested where they needed to, which created them flexibility of options and opened up the door to where, when all else fails, go offense first. In terms of what worked well for the Bears in this draft, I think there were several things. One, they ended up with 4 picks in the top 62, including 3 of them in round 2. This is a team coming into this draft with pick 10 and then pick 39 and 41 and 72, I think was. So with some maneuvering, they got 4 picks in the top 62, 3 of them in round 2. Some pretty premium spots right there, and I like that because I think if you're going to say there was a strength in this draft, it probably was on day 2. It really was. Multiple picks invested in the trenches on both sides of the ball, right? Or at least on the offense, they spent 2 picks on offensive linemen and then took Shemar Turner later in round 2, so they addressed something on the defense, and they needed to. They absolutely needed to. Because even with signing Dio and Grady Jarrett and free agency, the defensive line, in particular the pass rush, is a question, I think still going to be a big question heading into the season, and most likely will be the thing that would hold this team back, other than Caleb getting injured and or sucking, right? Like, that would be the thing that hold them back. So good on them for investing multiple picks in the trenches. And what they did with the selection of Ozzy Trapilo was they created a pathway to not having to pay Braxton Jones $20+ million a year to be an average left tackle starting in 2026. Like, that's fantastic. And I'll tell you what, for all those dumb dicks that were sitting there talking about, oh, they're just fine with Braxton Jones at left tackle, that's not something to address. What do you got to say now? Oh, they love Braxton Jones and Karan Amagaji. They're not going to invest a high pick in offensive tackle. Tell me how my ass tastes. Like, how could you be so dense and stupid about this? Really? I'm shocked that you would think that it wouldn't have been a possibility. Especially with a new coach coming in with a new philosophy, looking at trying to get his Taylor Decker on the right side. He feels like maybe he has his Penei Sewell already on the right side with Darnell Wright. Like, of course they're going to. So, yeah, I love the selection of Trapilo where they got him. Acquiring the 2026 4th-round pick from the Rams to move back in round 5, like, that's always a good thing, especially when you're talking about day 3 picks. If you can sit there and peel back in round 5 and you pick up a higher round pick the next year, that is always really good work. I don't care. And I like some of the potential day 3 value that they got, specifically Zah Frazier in round 5, and then Kyle Monangai, the running back from Rutgers, in round 7. You've got some guys that have a chance to make the roster that you got on day 3. Really, really like that out of this draft for the Bears. However, I thought there were several things that could have went better. Having the 10th pick in this draft, I just don't think was the most ideal, frankly, right? This was not a star-studded, loaded at the top kind of draft. You had a couple of big-time guys like Cam Ward, certainly, and then Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. But then after that, there's a clear drop-off to like the next level, right? Ashton Jeanty was in that first tier, sorry. But none of those guys are going to be there for the Bears. And when you talk about pick 10, like how likely were teams going to want to move up to that spot? Just didn't really see it happening. So it's one of those things. Sometimes that's the way the draft works out. It's how the board falls. It wasn't maybe the best spot that they could be in. Was drafting a tight end really the right allocation of the 10th pick? Like I've talked about this so often that in this year's draft, whoever the Bears took at 10 or in the first round had to be a guy that could be elite as a position, not a really good player, not just a star, but a superstar, like a franchise-changing, game-breaking type of player. Now, we'll see whether or not Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, becomes that guy. But when you talk about taking a tight end that high, where the hit rate on that in recent years isn't exactly the greatest, you start to question why. And then when you talk about a team that already has so much invested in the skill positions with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, and if you want to throw in Cole Kmet at tight end, fine. Like, you draft Colston Loveland at 10, like, are you spending the 10th pick on a guy that's going to maybe at his best in the current configuration of the roster have 600, 700 yards receiving? I think it's a totally fair question to ask, like, unless you're going to clear a path where Loveland could be your primary or like a high-end secondary option in this passing game, it might have been an over-investment in the resource into the position and the talent. And then investing the first 2 picks on pass catchers based on the current roster. Now, it'd be hypocritical for me to say that I'm knocking them for that when my talk was about free agency and trade. You fill the major holes, and then you go into this draft and you play the board and you go with talent. And you just invest in talent. But there is something to be said of, like, at some point in time, need does matter a little bit, and why did you not get a running back earlier in the draft, right? And tying into that, like, it's just a thing of, similar to Colston Loveland, now you bring in Luther Burden, he's a second-round pick. How many opportunities is he going to get if you don't get rid of guys like DJ Moore and Cole Kmet maybe after 2025? Like, you really wonder if you're going to get the full value out of that draft pick that you would want. It's a fair question. And then a big one, obviously, and I'm sure a lot of Bears fans will agree, and this is just like, you know, a couple of years ago, not investing in an edge rusher, for multiple years not drafting a center high. You know, and the Bears fans were proven right about this. Not addressing running back until round 7 because they got caught behind, really, in rounds 2 and 4. Like, that's painful. It's clear the Bears wanted Travion Henderson at 39. I don't think there's any question about it. So when the Patriots took him at 38, that was a bit of a gut punch for them. And then in round 4, I'm just hoping one of Bashal Tootin or Cam Scadaboo is going to be there at 109. And man, it was a gut punch on day 3 last Saturday when I saw Tootin got taken at 104 by the Jags and Scadaboo went 105 to the Giants. And no surprise, the Bears peeled out afterwards. It's clear they had their eye on one of those 2 guys. They had to. Maybe one of those situations should have actually moved up a little bit if you needed to. So taking Hyppolite at 132 when there were better defensive prospects available, like Jordan Farmer was there. A big one to me, especially for a team that needed more in terms of edge rushers. Why is Braden Swinson not in the mix here? And you say he doesn't fit the system. Well, find a way to make him fit your system. He's clearly a better talent at that stage of the draft than Hyppolite is. Like, yeah, Hyppolite's a great athlete and all of that, but can he fucking play? He had 5 years in college. He was marginally productive at best. He can run around and fly around, but as soon as he has to actually play and feel the position and have instincts and awareness and like all of those basic linebacker things, he falls woefully short. So maybe he's a guy that you deploy on special teams, and that's great because you can tell him you don't have to think, just go get the guy. But damn, like, you smell Munton Jr., the linebacker for Georgia, like, there were better defensive prospects on the board at 132. And then not burning day 3 picks for guys that stay 1 year. Like Darrell Taylor, Chris Williams, although I know he's still technically on the roster. You get what I'm saying though, right? Like, at some point, if you're going to trade these picks, you'd like these guys to contribute to your team for multiple years. Otherwise, you feel like you just wasted a pick. I think their best pick, I mentioned it before, I think it's Ozzy Trapilo. And it's not like he was a raging like value pick. Like, I thought he was like a mid-second round grade, so somewhere in like the 40 to 50 range. So them taking him where he did, was a little bit of a value, but it's more about what it represents. It is an acknowledgement of the bigger financial picture for this team of you could play it safe and hope Braxton Jones comes back from injury all right and plays at his previous level, and then you're thinking about having a franchise tag him and potentially giving him a long-term extension that even for an average left tackle is going to be north of $20 million a year for 3 to 4 years at minimum. Or you take a guy in round 2 who from like 2026 to 2028 plays left tackle, and you might have to pay him like $2 to $3 million. And even if he's only a Braxton Jones level player, would you rather pay Braxton Jones $20 million or a Braxton Jones level performer $2 million? Not hard to think about, right? That's why I think Trapilo is actually a better tackle than Braxton Jones. But just from the sheer financial perspective, salary cap perspective, which is important, it's Trapilo all day. He was the best pick. I think the worst pick again was Ruben Hyppolite II. I think the sleeper here is Kyle Monangai. I would have said Zah Frazier, but there's a little piece of me of it took him 6 years or so of college to really produce, and he's going to be 25 years old as a rookie. Like, how much can he contribute? But he can actually play. See, he might go in there too, but I think Monangai does have a shot to stick. But folks that are talking about he could be the starter in this and that, they're probably getting way ahead of their skis. So when I take a look back at this Bears draft, I think the first 2 picks are heavily reliant upon how their usage and any roster shift that takes place to accommodate them. Like, that's what those 2 picks really come down to. Because the talent in both Colston Loveland, who I thought was tight end 1 in this draft, and Luther Burden is great, right? But you got to put them in a situation where they get the reps to justify the draft position. Again, I think Ozzy Trapilo was a huge long-term get. I absolutely love that. In terms of Shemar Turner, I think his outcome heavily depends upon his usage and his progression. Certainly being healthy again would be great for him. But as much as I want to say, like, hey, he's got great athleticism and this and that, I'm just not confident that he could stick inside at the NFL level. Now, if you told him drop about 10 pounds, 15 pounds, and play as like a power edge in Dennis Allen's system, I'm like, that's a perfect fit. But while I appreciate Dennis Allen loves that inside penetration, those guys that can be disruptive up the middle, I just don't know that Shemar Turner is that disruptive up the middle that consistently. I love his ability to play all over the line for sure. You can kick him inside sometimes on pass rush downs, but I really, right now, until I'm proven wrong, and it might be, I think he's an edge, and he needs to play as an edge in this system. I think the day 3 values they got in Zah Frazier and Kyle Monangai can pay off for this team. Both of them, I think, have a high chance of sticking on the active roster as rookies. Well, that was a solid draft for the Bears. Like I said, I kind of questioned the approach at the front end just a little bit. Waiting until drafting a running back until round 7 is highly questionable, as was not directly drafting an edge rusher at any point in time when it was such an obvious need. Well, we signed Dial, and what's your fucking point? If he was that great of an edge rusher, Indianapolis would have signed him, or somebody else would have paid him even more. That's all I'm saying. So in terms of grade, I give the Bears like a C+ here. I thought it was a little bit better than average, but the payoff could be much higher, especially if Trapilo becomes a higher end left tackle, if Colston Loveland becomes like a top 5 in the league tight end, Luther Burden becomes a great weapon out of the slot, and this draft has a chance to vastly outperform the draft grade. But that's where it's at right now. You let me know what you think about this draft. Do you think I'm being too harsh, or do you think this was a draft of Bears football? Let me know in the comments.